Hey guys, so this past weekend we had the Brazilian National, the biggest national all over Latin America with over 800 players. By that I mean the best players all over Brazil, the biggest national all over Brazil, and bunch of Snake Eyes, bunch of Tempai Dragons, many good players who also made some good results at FICS Rio were also in this national in São Paulo. And even with a lot of the best decks of the metagame, a singular Melodius out of the top 32 ended up being the winner of this event. So in today's video, I'm gonna talk about what can we learn from Brazil National so you can apply this for your next events. And also, besides that, we can also try to see how my experience, because I was fortunate enough to be one of the 32 players on the top cut, I'm gonna talk about a bit of my experience on this tournament and how my preparation for this event ended up happening by what I was expecting and what happened at the end. So with that being said, before starting with the video, I will ask you guys to please give us a like, please give us a comment, also subscribe because we are still growing this new channel in English, and I would appreciate all the help, all the feedbacks, everything from you guys. With that being said, let's talk about what can we learn from Brazilian National. Over the top 32 from Brazilian National, we can see something very different from what I saw on ICS Indianapolis last weekend. Because on ICS Indianapolis, there were like 22 Snake Eyes and just one Tempai Dragon. But now for the Brazilian National, we can see there are like 10 Snake Eyes, but this 10 is not really true because we also have the 2 Fire Kings, so it's 12 Snake Eyes and we have 9 Tempai Dragons. So it's a bunch more of Tempai Dragons. And I can say that many of the good Brazilian players who doesn't have enough money to build the best deck, to build the Snake Eye, they choose the Tempai Dragon strategy to be their budget option to play on this format, and many of them were very successful because we know many good players are still playing Tempai because they don't have the money to play the best decks. And even with that, the Tempai Dragon just proves out what I have been saying from a long time. It's a good deck to get you into your top cut, but it's not a good deck to win you your event. Because of the 9 Tempais on the top 32, just 2 of them were on the top 8 and none of them were on the top 4. Even though this top 4 is not something that you would expect, because on the top 4 we had a Melodius that was the only Melodius of the top 32 and ended up winning the event, a Labyrinth, a Snake Eye pure version on the hands of Paulo PRRJ, and we also had a Running Stun, another deck that was like just one Running Stun over the top 32. Then on top 8 we can see Snake Eyes, Tempais Dragon, top 16 also we saw a Castira there, a Dinomorphia played by our former national champion Felipe Urias. Felipe Urias is one of the best Brazilian players and he always try to choose some different approaches for the good decks of the format. So when he brings the Dinomorphia, he's not like that local guy that just loves playing Dinomorphia and just got lucky. No, it was a very confident decision to bring Dinomorphia to an event because he thought that he could beat out the meta game decks with his Dinomorphia strategy. And then we have plenty of Snake Eyes, Fire Kings, Voiceless Voice. I think Voiceless Voice is a deck that is falling down constantly because this deck loses a lot with the release of the Snake Eyes Jabel Star, a card that gives for the Snake Eyes strategy a new way to play underhand traps, for example. So the Voiceless Voice at this point just doesn't make enough to beat the Snake Eye strategy. That's why they are falling off of the format. Henrique Braga had a very interesting approach playing the Tempai cards on side deck. So he could use a more aggressive engine of hand traps, of prosperities, for example, but then this would be paired up with the Tempai cards and would give you a best going second option. Maybe you can argue that it would be better to just play Tempai Dragons, but he bring this to an event, into a 10 rounds event, and he got successful with it. So it's something that you can't give enough the value of this idea, because this idea paid off for him. He got into the top 32. And besides that, what can we argument about how the Melodius deck won the event? So Gustavo Vilela is an amazing player from Brazil. He had results from a long time And he said on his deck profile that this deck has to destroy Tenpai Dragon and has to destroy the Snake Eye strategy, and he was very confident on it to do so. But many Brazilian players were also getting prepared for the Melodios matchup. If we can see, for example, in the top 8 from Leonardo Ferreira, they are using cards, for example, like the Underworld Goddess, cards that are mainly targeting the Melodios strategy. So it's kind of funny because this deck, he's trying to win a lot against the Snake Eye, but the Snake Eye, looking how strong is the luck of Aria plus a Toil, he's looking and say, okay, how can I prepare myself for this? And then the best pilots, the pilots that respects more the goddess, they are getting better options to win their games. They are getting better results, like Gustavo Vilela just did, winning the biggest national of the history of Brazil and the biggest national of Latin America this season. So besides that, we can also argument like how this labyrinth was built. We don't have the labyrinth build yet, but it's a heavily trap labyrinth build. He was not using any of the discard this card plus another card and set a labyrinth. He was not using this kind of list of labyrinth. He was using multiple dimensional barriers, multiple flood gates, solemn strikes. It was a more trap heavy way to play, an approach that is very decent against the Snake Eyes strategy, especially if you are going first. You are trying to destroy the Snake Eye strategy. So that's why the finals were between the Melodios and the Labyrinth, even though the more dominant deck was the Snake Eye and was the Tenpai Dragon. And I think this is gonna repeat itself for a bunch of events. Like, if you make yourself prepared enough to play against the best options of the format, I think you are gonna to have better results. And the proof of that is that none of Snake Eyes or Tenpais were on the final of this event. So I think this also help you guys to see like, okay, I don't need to play the best deck to still winning an event. The second biggest national from Latin America, the Mexican national, was won by a Labyrinth deck. And I think this is not a coincidence. I think these decks, they are prepared well enough to beat all the regular metagame stuff and try to win those games like that. So, well, with that being said, I'm going to talk about a bit of my own experience on this event. I already made my deck profile. My deck profile is already up on this channel, so please give a look, give me a like, a subscribe, a comment. It's pretty much similar from what I bring to ICS Rio, but I explained all my tech decisions, all my change decisions, why I didn't change it something. For example, why I kept the Drawing Lock Bird instead of the Ghost Ogre. So yeah, please give me some love on my deck profile. I just made the deck profile in English, so yeah, I would appreciate. But out of my rounds, this was my Swiss and top cut. I played F-total 5 Tenpai Dragons, 2 Snake Eyes, and then some random stuff like Rika, Chimera, Vanquish Soul, and Melodios. And this is something that you could expect. Many other players, they play like 7 Snake Eyes, 8 Snake Eyes, for example, but was not impossible to predict that your experience at your national, especially if you are on the high tables. I was X1 until the round 8, so I played like many of the high score players all over my tournament. Even when I was playing on the bubble, I was also playing against another X2 players for my spot on the top cut. And many of them were on the Tenpai Dragon strategy. This is not a surprise, especially because Brazil has this specific thing where we have a lot of very good and very skilled players that doesn't have enough money to build the best decks of the format. And this is very particular about Brazil. This is not something that's gonna repeat itself, for example, for events in the United States. So for Brazil, when I was preparing myself to play this national, I had to be more prepared for the Tenpai matchup than I would be on, for example, ICS Indianapolis, where you could expect to play out of your 11 rounds, you could expect to play against 7, against 8 Snake Eyes decks, for example. So that's why I made some of the decisions of my deck. I had to have a decent deck against the Snake Eye, because now when I enter an event, I'm always willing to win the event. But I also have to to have a good matchup against the temporary strategy. And even some concessions I made for other matchups, for example, the Underworld Goddess, they were also very, were not high risky because I knew many good players were going for the Melodious strategy, trying to avoid the hand trap wars of the Snake Eyes and the board breakers of the Empire Dragon. That's why we had to put a bit more of respect for the Melodious matchup. And with that being said, this was mainly because I had information about what the people were playing. I had information about the Brazilian metagame, but I studied it a lot. I look at it a lot. So it's very important for when you are preparing yourself for an event to give a look for everything. Don't just go and play the best deck list that just won ICS. Just don't go for a next event with the same meta call of the last event, because just a single result changes everything. For example, as the deck of Paulo got super popular with Metaltronos, with Crossout, with Skill Drain, they were playing like 12 cards that could be set when they were going playing first. That's why I included on my side deck and also in my side deck batters against the Snake Eye my copies of Lightning Storm and Feather Duster. And I got super happy for that because Paulo, I don't play with Paulo, not testing with Paulo, but on his log he said he came up to the same conclusion. He came up with the same idea of people will try to copy his deck list from ICS Indianapolis, so we have to be more prepared for it right now. And I think this is very important. This kind of insights that you have while you are training are also very important because you have to feel like what the meta game is changing, how the meta game is changing, and ICS Indianapolis changed everything for the Brazilian Nationals. Again, I'm super happy and super proud of myself because I could get another good result this year. I displayed on top 32, I think I could have won my match, but I'm still not sad about my overall weekend. And with that being said, please give me your like, your subscribe, your comment if you didn't made it until now. And yeah, with that being said, see you next video. Goodbye.